Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. I'm here with Bill Williams. How you doing, Bill?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm a little discombobulated. Being
Same here.
home
The
for so
day.
long, my sleep pattern is just messy. I'm like, I go
I
to bed
think
at 3 o'clock, wake
I
up at
think I can top that.
oh,
So, um, I was running late because I was working on pages and getting my posts in and getting my stuff done to start my day. And I realized I needed to go and get a shower, but then I just put all the towels in the laundry, and that was running. So I was thinking, I can't just run around wet for a while and hope to air dry. Nobody wants to see that. So, well, there's that towel where the cat sleeps. So I, in fact, accidentally dried my face with cat hair this morning.
oh, there you go.
So
There you
yeah,
go.
it's a good thing I'm not allergic. I'm, I'm finishing up like, what is this in my eyes? Like, oh, I got
I
some
have
free fuzz. Nice.
I have a grumpy old cat named Lucy that she hides all day long. You never see her. My friends are convinced we only have one cat because they never see Lucy. But
Yeah.
when I lay down to go to bed, not my wife, but when I lay down to go to bed, that cat, boom, right next to me, and then snuggles, and then I pet her, and then she bites me and scratches me.
They
It's
have a weird relationship. They're
yeah,
they're odd little creatures.
yeah. She like if I walk into the bedroom, like if I forgot my wallet or whatever, she like, are we laying down? Are we laying, and like she'll come and come out of hiding to be like, it's time for bed. So
Yeah.
this time, now that for those of you who don't know, I broke my neck. I'm out of work right now, so I just have whatever schedule I feel like. I'm like a little kid.
Aside from
She's,
the broken neck, isn't it awesome to have your own schedule?
it's put me off. I don't. I think human beings, or at least me, I think I thrive better under a schedule. Now I don't like waking up at 4:30 in the morning, going to work, jumping in the pit, digging in the mud, and I'm a
Yeah,
construction
yeah,
worker. But
yeah.
I think I'm learning that I should wake up at like at a decent time every day, because yesterday, talking about cats, we had feral cats in the backyard, and we rescued all of them except for one. And I just stayed up all night just thinking of this poor cat, because we took mom. I'm like, this poor cat hasn't eaten in like over 24 hours. The mom's gone. I don't think they eat solid food yet. And I'm like, we got to get this cat. We got to get this. But when we put the traps out overnight, we were catching raccoons. So I'm like, oh man, we got to do it during the day. So I couldn't sleep. So long story short, we caught the cat 8 o'clock in the morning. So I went to bed at 8:30, woke up at 2, then went to a barbecue, and I felt like yelling at everybody at the barbecue. You know what I mean? They were all being, hey, you got a comic book. And I'm like, shut the hell up. Because our system's out of whack,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So
Yep.
I think I need to get back on schedule. I
I
got
think that
another.
it's I think that it's good at some base level to be accountable to your fellow man. I'm basically just working on the campaign and working on my projects right now. So I took a volunteer gig. I'm working with the people at Austin Film Fest to get a producer's badge, which is a ordinarily like $600-700 badge, but it gets me into all the movies, all the panels, all the everything. It would like it would be like working for the people at the San Diego show, doing back of the house stuff, and then just getting a all day all access pass for the show. So it's kind of cool.
Cool, cool. Uh, I'm I'm doing nothing. You know I was out in the backyard with a chainsaw cutting down shrubs and everything, and then my my comic book room is constant work of organizing, and because now I'm doing nothing but reading comics, and then you put comics in long boxes, and then you got to shift them around because it's alphabetical order. When you got 155 boxes, you're moving boxes, or
You got
so
to find
it,
a way to get those extra boxes in there. Yep.
yeah, it never ends. It never ends. But
So how do you tag them? You obviously can't write in something permanent on the side of the box or on the
no, I
front of
just
the box.
here.
You have a ton of post-it notes.
No, I just, they're in alphabetical order. So the top right is A, and that little where you put your handhole, I can see. Oh, look, there's Luke Cage. So this is Power Man Iron Fist. Oh, look, that's Ben Grimm. So this is the Fantastic
Okay.
Four. So that's So, but I know, like if you were to come over, you would be totally lost. But I know where they are, and that's really all that matters.
Well,
Uh,
it's weird because you some people file Amazing Spider-Man and Fantastic Four under A&F, and then there's Mighty Thor. Well,
Correct.
that's close to Journey into Mystery, but not close enough. So at some point, you got to figure out exactly where the hell are your books go in case you want to find them.
Right. Well, I've been criticized. Well, first off, that's my comic book room.
Yeah, I've seen.
So uh, underneath, if diagonally under the Y,
Uh,
that's numbers. So like if there's a comic book 01 go, that's where that would be. So
52
like
weeks.
yeah, 52 weeks is
Yeah.
in that, and then underneath it. So it starts and then it goes underneath.
Yeah.
And then the second row would be whatever, you know. So
At
Avengers.
when I was running the comic department at my last gig, I did it backwards. I started with numbers, and then we slid into the alphabet.
Right. So I start with numbers and then I go into the alphabet. So if if you go from the street diagonally to the right, you'll get to X-Men down there.
Yeah.
And then, you know, if behind me is another 20 boxes of comics that I haven't read yet. So, you know,
So what's in the stack you haven't read yet? Anything cool?
Yeah. Anything crowdfunded, it goes right over here. So that's like all crowdfunded. And
Wow.
so
Good for you.
So that's, you know, so I'm trying, because I people like, oh, did you read my comic? Somebody comes on like Bill, you come on my channel and then you know I got your comic, and my channel's policy is if I don't talk about your comic, I didn't like it, because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I'm not here to be negative, and there's too much, you know. Every once
There's
in
a
a while,
lot of that out there anyway. You
right?
know, I saw I went to go see Beetlejuice, you know, again, one of the benefits of being unemployed. I went to the early matinee on Friday and I saw it, and my friends are asking me, "Oh, what was it like? Was it good?" I was like, "Good, not great." You
Well,
know,
if
and then I
somebody,
see the headlines for the reviews and reviewers just hate it.
yeah, my wife and I were just talking about it last. I'm one of the few people who didn't like the original one, so you know, no skin off my nose.
Yeah.
But I'm not really a Tim Burton fan. There's a few Tim Burton movies that I like. Those
Well,
are the exceptions.
I think that you can compare works by the same artist and largely the same creative team that created the Wednesday show, which I thought was awesome. They've created a lot of projects together, and I thought the Beetlejuice was just kind of lacked a certain amount of mojo. The only stuff I liked was the Soul Train stuff, but you know, the rest of it was okay.
So where I say, like, I'll get people's comics, and I don't want to be a I'm trying to be this. We all agree there's too much negativity on the internet anyway, and
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of negativity in the comic book YouTube indie sphere. I don't want to contribute to that. So if I don't like a comic, I'll keep it to myself. However, if I'm asked directly, I'm not going to be a liar. So people started to get worried that I get their crowdfunded comic and then I don't say anything about it. But
Yeah.
that's just because it goes on the stack and then I put other comics on top of it. So I'm trying to make
And
it.
there's a pile. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to make it so that crowdfunded comics always stay right here and I read them first. You know, and the last time I gave a negative review, oh my God, the internet went nuclear on me, and people tried.
Why did you slam Mother Teresa or something?
No, that I probably would have gotten less heat if I slammed Mother Teresa. But you know,
Well, the
I
thing
did
about
4
it is, you
negative
know,
reviews in my life,
yeah,
on the life of my channel. One of them just to make a point. You know, these are comics that I don't like, and this is why I don't like them. And I thought that was useful. You know, and it was a corporate Marvel comic, so who cares? The second one, I kind of did it in a jokey manner to test out whether or not I wanted to do that kind of stuff. I didn't feel good. I thought it was a fun video, but I didn't particularly like it. And then two of them, because I couldn't avoid it, people kept asking me, "What do you think? What do you?" And I tried to be as fair and honest as possible with both of them. One of them, I guess it was in the popular consent, so nobody cared. One of them, I was like, "How dare you criticize this? This person is untouchable because whatever." And I was like, "But I honestly don't like it, and I think I can explain why I don't like." And I learned that the hard way. You know, nobody wants to hear. So
people don't necessarily want to hear your opinion when it disagrees with them. People
right.
ask for your opinion, hoping for a violent agreement.
Well, people that liked well, people that didn't like that creator for whatever reasons, all of a sudden I'm on their side. Like, dude, I'm not on anybody's side. I'm on Good Comic side. So a
Yeah,
bunch of people rushed, and I'm being vague on purpose because I'm not. I'm trying
good.
not to drum up all this. But a few people were like, "Well, what do you think about so and so's comic? Do you think it's going to be good?" And I always say the same thing, and I honestly mean it. I want it to be good. Why do I want anybody to just whether I like you or that person doesn't like me? I want your comics to be good. So there's one person that, for whatever reason, slags me. I still want their comic to be good. And this is what I say. If I go to a restaurant and I sit down and I order a food, don't we want that dinner to be good? Don't we want that meal to be enjoyable? Don't we want it to be delicious? So when I buy a comic book, why am I buying a comic rooting for it to be bad? I want it to be good. And I'm only disappointed when it's bad. And you know what? Like I say this, there's a restaurant around the block for me. It's terrible. Do you want to talk about it for 6 months, or do you want to just move on to the next restaurant? This restaurant is good. Let's go over here and talk about this. I mentioned this one was bad. Fair enough, but I'm not going to dwell on it for 6 months. I don't understand that mentality. You know,
Well, I think it's more useful to share news about stuff that's good.
right?
Negative reviews have their place, and
Correct.
in comics, I think that everybody benefits from having a healthy Marvel and a healthy DC, and that's sort of not the case right now. I look at a
Absolutely.
lot of the channels and listen to people break down the numbers and the sales numbers and stuff, and I've noticed a couple of things at the same time. One of them is that DC seems to be struggling. They've got a lot of books not in the top 100, which means it's hard to justify continuing to publish them because there's
Right.
no audience for them. And that's demonstrated if you don't have people hooked by issue 14 or 15. You've given them their bite at the apple. That's enough. Um, and I'm stunned at the energy and the volume of the crowdfunded stuff. Not just from, it would be easy to talk about Mark and Tim and what they've done with Common America. But if you start scrolling through Kickstarter and looking at comics, you will find tons of stuff.
Yes. Yes.
And, I thought I was going to have a little bit more of a clear playing field when I showed up to start selling my comics. Turns out I'm way, way, way late to this part of the show.
Yeah. There's a lot of competition, and um, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It just, to me, it just shows that crowdfunding is viable. Like if 10,000 people are doing it, then it's like, okay, then, if I would be a little bit more worried if there's only 6 people doing it, because then like,
But
but
that's say 3 creators per team. That's 30,000 people that are not working at a bigger company and bringing their infusion of energy and ideas to that company. And I think that's part of what's happening. I think that crowdfunding is actually killing the big companies because if you look at the output by essentially the big companies right now, their big books are being written by people that have been writing there for 20 years.
uh, somebody asked, I forget who it was, but they just asked me like, I get this, I get this question asked a lot. If you could write something for the big two, what would it be? And I said, for my entire life, I always wanted to write the Fantastic Four. That was my comic of choice. And I was just talking to Tom DeFalco the other day, and I said I would love to write the Fantastic Four. I said they got such wonderful toys to play with. Like the way the company is right now, I don't know if I would, but I do know if I got the chance to write that, I have this one story that I would love to tell. But I would bring
Yeah.
up the Mole Man and Galactus and the Celestial, but I wouldn't bring up any new creations. Yeah, I don't. Why would I add anything new to Marvel? And then I said, for what? To get a ticket to the movie and then watch actors get paid millions to pretend they're my creation, and some screenwriter get 100 grand to write my character, and I get a ticket to the movie and a pat on the head.
You may not even get a ticket to the movie. I
Right,
mean, if
right,
you
right.
if you look at
Yeah,
at
I
the at
ticket to
the
the movie and
drama
I have to pay for my wife.
yeah, yeah. If you look at the drama
So I think
surrounding,
that's a lot. I think a lot of people are like, you know what? I'm going to save my A game for my own stuff.
yeah.
You know?
Well, it worked for the Image guys,
Yes.
sort of. A couple of them had a ton of ideas. A lot. A
Yeah, I'm
couple
just
of
I'm
them
just
had a
addressing the chat while we're talking.
yeah, yeah. A couple of them had a ton of ideas, and they're still running. Some of the guys use their time at Image to learn more about the business and go on and use that in different ways. But you know, Mc, even McFarlane went through a period where, he was working on the book, but he wasn't working on it like Larson is,
Right.
who's just grinding out pages every day. Because, McFarlane has great toy lines. He put out great NFL and great sports toys. Now he's doing great Batman toys. So good for him.
Yeah,
Everybody
can you
should have a
believe it?
chance to go do what makes him
Like
happy.
McFarlane is making the big twos toys.
Yes.
What a coup that is. I want to say, hey, Genuine Comics, this is a guy who's making comics right now. I don't
Wow.
know if you're familiar with Dave Brink's comics. They're wonderful, wonderful. And I hope Dave doesn't get insulted when I say this, but this is a European making American style superhero comics better than most Americans. It's so good. And Tyson says Fantastic Four. I agree. I love Fantastic Four. And yes, I think not only do I have every Black Panther comic, but I think I have every Black Panther appearance up until 2015. I love the Black Panther. And thank you.
Wow.
That is a beautiful setup. I'm a lunatic when it comes to comics. Oh yeah, we were talking about the order, and then you brought up okay, so what do you think about this? This is my insanity. Everything's in alphabetical order, but then it's broken by character. So Spider-Man is a perfect example. So when it comes to Spider-Man, there's a Spider-Man title. I think Todd McFarlane did that. So that would be first because it's just Spider-Man. Then when that's done, Spider-Man Amazing. Okay. And then when that's done, Spider-Man Spectacular. And then when that's done,
Web.
Spider-Man Web. You know, and then annuals, annual Amazing, annuals. So that's how I do it because I want all my Spider-Mans over here. I don't want to. Then I forget this. So all Spider-Mans are like within a 7 boxes.
Yeah.
And then X-Men. Oh my God, X-Men is difficult to catalog.
It's hard because there's so many of them.
Yeah. So that's how what do you think? Do you think that's crazy? I think it's logical, but then again, that's my system. I need to.
I'm a big fan of the database that mycomicshop.com runs. So, they have everything broken out alphabetically, and that's essentially what I do. I've got all my Spider-Mans broken up because if not, you end up like filing Marvel team ups after Spider-Man and all kinds of other random stuff. And I'm like, I just want to use the alphabet. I want to have this easy because as I get older and lose brain cells, I don't want to be spending my time trying to remember who appeared in what book.
I just want to. This is Nick X, wonderful artist. He's doing the art for Crom the Destroyer right now, as well as helping me with my providing an invaluable assistance.
That's
wonderful,
awesome.
Wonderful artist. Logic's Finest always has great comments. People want the truth until it hurts their feelings. The old saying is, people want the beautiful lie over the ugly truth. Confirmation of bias is agreeing with someone who thinks you do. And we all think that we're above confirmation bias, until my wife reminds me, and then I'm like, yeah, I don't have a snappy comeback for that.
Yeah. You only hang out with people that agree with you. How boring is that?
Yeah. Fantastic Four is legendary. I'm just going down the chat. I don't want people to feel left out. Personal preference is not criticism.
Yeah.
Right. And also, I know we're jumping around the topics, but people have to learn what is and what is not criticism, and what is and was. Just because you don't like something doesn't mean it's bad, and just because you like something doesn't mean it's good. But and I'm trying to learn this, which is why I don't want to give negative reviews, because I don't think I'm good enough, and I don't know if my negative comments are helpful, because I want them to be helpful. I don't want to just say, oh, Phil Moskowitz's comic book was terrible because it was the worst thing ever and it's a piece of garbage. How does that help anybody other than whatever? So I like to, if I'm going, like I said, I gave 4 negative reviews. I think one of them was snarky on purpose. One of them was silly because I was trying something else. And I think 2 of them were honest. And I tell you, man, I got more crap out of the honest reviews than the silly ones.
Yes, people do not always like that truth.
Do I have an A game? Yes. I have a lowercase A game. We'll leave it at that. A lowercase A.
Nice.
Saw you on Art Thibert today. I just had nothing to say. Me? You were on Art Thibert? Oh, so he was watching you, but he didn't have any comments. And Perfect 10. This is Dave Briggs. Check that out. So, am I all caught up? Oh no, Zach 10. I checked 5 of my favorite sources. They've confirmed. I have no confirmation. Yeah, I know. Oh, here we go. I love Punchline. Will there be a 3rd trade paperback?
So
I didn't mention it.
yes, let me give you an update on that.
You are the writer
Um,
of Punchline. So there you go. That's why this F in the chat is
I
it.
am. That's a good thing. So, really don't want to throw my publisher under the bus, so I'm not gonna.
But
We
I
set
will
a
say
date
I
for
love Punchline. So
we
how's that?
set we set a date for putting out the Punchline, the third collection, and I never delivered the book to them, so it didn't come out. And Diamond canceled the orders, and the orders were not great because we're putting them out every, you know, I don't want to say quarterly, but we're putting out a few a year. The output has been a little slow. So uh, I guess last year at the Bell County show, I was at dinner with the guys that run AP, the Dunn brothers. Yeah, it predates the DC character by a lot,
Yes.
and I find that as a source of irritation because anybody could do a Google search. Um, anyway, I talked with the Dunn brothers and I said, look, if you go into a Barnes and Noble, kids are sitting in the aisles reading manga. They're not sitting in the aisles at the local comic shop. The local comic shop is filling up with retirees like me. We need to go where the kids are. That's the way that comics have sold better over the long run. Let's try that. And they're like, no, it doesn't work. I'm like, when's the last time you tried? Well, we tried it before. It didn't work. So, okay. So I got back to him. I said, look at these tiny Marvel Masterworks books. These are cute. And if you can make that wordy Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, Doctor Strange stuff work at that size, our stuff's going to work just fine. You won't have to use a magnifying glass. You'll be able to just sit down and read. They said, no. All right, fine. DC has success with it. And they're like, hey, we're rolling out a manga size line. Like, that's great. Let's make a deal. So the first Punchline trade paperback will come out in manga size next year, followed by the second and third ones. The third one is not going to be printed at full size by the AP guys. The third one uh, will be printed at regular size by me and Matt sometime this year. I want to test the waters with the Blackheart book. I've got a role playing game supplement in the works. I've got a book about how to make comics in the works. And all these things are sort of inching towards the finish line, and whatever gets there first is going to hit the market first. But that third collection, we need to have some money in the bank because it's going to collect 6 issues. So that's probably going to be between 140 and 160 pages. And the printing bill doesn't kill you on that. The shipping does. So getting that many books from Shanghai is pretty expensive. So, we've got to figure out how we're going to make all this work. But, I applaud AP for going back to press with one of our books because we get paid. And the Blackheart book, I think, will probably end up coming out through AP at some time, but it won't be until at least next summer. If you want to read it as a hard copy, my campaign right now is the best place to find it. Hola.
Just wow. I'm so glad so many people are popping in the chat. All the numbers just going up and up and up. Oh, Bill, you're pretty popular because it ain't me.
I'm a big underground success.
Yeah. People abandoned me when I shaved the beard.
Oh yeah?
It's not the same. No.
You look less intimidating.
I went to like I said, I went to that barbecue yesterday, and I was talking to my buddy's wife, and halfway through, I realized she was just being polite. She had no idea who I was. I'm like, we met 3 times. We hung out and talked. She's like, I have no. I said, I'm the guy with the beard, and she's like, oh, I think I know who you are.
That's a tempting moment for levity, probably inappropriate. So yeah, that's a good thing.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ben Dunn. Is that your real name? His Mangaverse was slept on. My floppies are by characters, teams, and numbers. Oh, you talk about how you organize by characters, teams, and numbers, arcs, crossover. Yeah, arc. Well, arcs, crossovers. I don't want to put them in there because then I'm going to think I'm missing comics. So they're in there. And if I need to get the, Kraven's Last Hunt, at least all the Spider-Mans are in the same general area, and I could get them and read them.
Yeah, I would say that omnibuses are a strange way to collect comics, and you might miss out on something, but that's not true anymore. You know, if you look down the list of things that are coming out in omnibus size from Marvel, they are they're putting stuff in bound collections I never thought I'd see. I mean, you can see where the boys' collection is collected because there's a TV show based on it, blah blah blah. Something like Strike Force Morituri getting an omnibus. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
Okay,
Rom is getting one, and my goodness,
yes.
yeah, these comics were out of print. Well, I mean, they came out, and that was it because of the licensing deals. I'm
Well,
amazed.
they thing is that that has a surprisingly long run. Um, yeah, Ben's a good guy, and he had a shot at doing Marvel stuff and manga style. And if that same project came out now, it'd probably be a little more popular. Yeah, I agree. Omnibuses are a complete way to read something. There's no
Yeah,
cliffhangers with an omnibus.
I'm just an old timer. I need my floppy comics, but you know, I think like once you hit 20 years old, like everything about you is almost like locked. Like cars don't look right, music doesn't sound right. you know,
Yeah.
I find like I'll watch a movie and I'm like, these girls, they don't look right. And then I'll watch like a movie from the 70s and I'm like, oh, these women are so beautiful, like
Well, sometimes you get attached to fashion.
yeah,
That
yeah.
happens.
I'm like,
I go out of
what
my
are they
way
wearing?
to I go out of my way to listen to new music and to try new things. And one of the upcoming punchline stories, there you go. One of the punchline stories that's coming up is done in a total manga style.
Oh yeah.
So, the artist is very sweet. She's very polite. She's a little timid. And she said, "What do you think's going to happen?" I said, "I honestly don't know, but I'm willing to try. And I hope the audience follows us on this in this manga style story." I think she's up to page 19 out of a 26, 28 page book. And the story is that Mel finds out that there's a hundreds of millions of dollars contract out on Versuma for some reason. And she tries to find out who put the contract out on her protege while her, superpowered partner won't stop responding to emergencies, which the bad guys are causing so they can take a shot at her. So it's Versuma getting into trouble while Mel's trying to figure out who put out the contract so she can eliminate the problem.
I like the dynamics of your comic. First off, Punchline, it's a story of basically two heroes. One of them is used to be the hero, is no longer the hero, and then so we have the older experienced girl lost her powers, but she's got the wherewithal, she's got the wisdom, she's got the wits. And then the younger protege's got the power. She's more naive, more idealistic, and I like the clashing between them.
I
And
wanted to build a flaw into their relationship like you would find in Lethal Weapon or The Odd Couple, where there are going to be moments where they agree and then other moments. Those other moments for me are more interesting.
I have to say, Punchline. You sent me PDFs when we first talked, and I was like, oh man, I don't want to read PDFs. I don't want to read PDFs. I want comics in my hand, and you were coming on like in a couple of hours, and I was like, well, let me at least look at them. And I read them, and I read all 6 issues right before I was hooked.
Yeah.
So first off, it was a PDF, and I read it, and I was hooked. So it shows you how good the comic is, And you break all my rules, and I still love it. It shows you how good.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a really good comic. I think up to 15 issues on the
15. Matt is working on a 2-issue thing. We're working a little bit differently now. He created 14 and 15, and I like the idea of Mel murdering her way down through a skyscraper, one floor at a time. And we talked about that. And she's trying to infiltrate the basement, but the basement's the hardest target. So she thinks that she'll warm up along the way because she's afraid that she's losing her mojo to an extent. So she goes floor by floor, and it's a glass pyramid of a building. So, in her opinion, the best way to go at it's right down through the center. But at one point, she gets thrown out of the building, and she's sliding down the outside of it, and she cheats and gets back in the building. And it's just it is a complete shoot 'em up. And Matt said,
Sounds like
"Oh, I got
sounds
a
like
good idea. Let me make this 2 issues, and I'll add this character. We'll do this." I'm like, "Okay, let's do it."
it sounds like John Wick. Yeah,
There's a character a bit like that in there somewhere, and it
yeah,
was certainly inspired by that kind of work, but it's within that Punchline universe.
yeah. I like it's superheroes, mythology. It's all the good stuff. Uh, and Phil's art is just so good. You know,
Matt's art is pretty amazing. Speaking of, dream DC projects, um, we were set up to do a San Antonio show, and our table was right across from Jim Lee's table.
oh, there you go.
I was like, "Wow, that's kind of cool." He's tiny. He'll be shuffled in and out before we get a chance to him. I said, "But Matt, if we do get a chance to talk to him, I've got an idea for a Zatanna story. Would you be interested in drawing that?" He goes, "Hell yeah." Like, all right. Turns out we set up at the show. We look over at his booth. It's fenced off. We're looking at the backside of his booth. He's facing the other way. And our side is all, that pipe and drapery stuff. I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah, that's about right. We have exactly the same chance of interacting with him at this point anyway. So I'm good.
I don't know. So you have a Zatanna story that you'd really like to tell. Like you're not going to make up another character and tell that story because I think I'm resigned to the fact that my Fantastic Four story will be told through my original characters.
Well, I would do the kind of thing that other people are doing with characters where you create other versions of that character. So you've got the Batman family and you've got a handful of good characters, then you have characters that are copies of copies of copies,
Right.
right? And it's like, well, you don't really have a personality. And then I thought about kind of Zatanna's origins, right? So Zatanna had a dad who was a traveling musician. I mean, a magician, sorry. And, he showed her the ropes and taught her how to be a performer. And she got into the real magic, ended up in the Justice League, all this other nonsense. Who's to say that Zatara didn't have, I don't want to say another family, but didn't have some other offspring out there? So I thought it would be interesting if Zatanna had somebody show up on her doorstep claiming to be her sister, you
Okay.
know, right or wrong, that creates a lot of drama immediately. And she says, "Hey, your dad was a traveling entertainer. How do you know that you don't have more than just me and you? How good a guy was he?" You know? So that was like the drama part and the kind of personal internal conflict for Zatanna. And then they find out what else is going on and have a big adventure, and it's kind of fun. Um,
And then your Zatanna's sister becomes a hit. There's a movie about her, and they don't even give you tickets to the film.
I don't even get any milk duds. Um, yeah, that's the kind of thing. And the thing is, that's the kind of thing you do when you're working for a big publisher. Going in that you're not gonna really own anything that you create,
Right.
but frankly, you hope to spin your success doing that into your own projects and be able to do your own stuff. It's sort of like there's no real good sports equivalent, but it's sort of like the lead singer leaving their band and going and being a solo act. At some
Right.
point, if you've got enough talent, that transfers.
I know Chuck Dixon. He's been on my channel a few times, and he says that DC has what they call participation. And I know Ethan Van Sciver is still getting checks from
Yeah,
DC and Shane Davis, but not Marvel. So Chuck Dixon says if you're going to create something with Marvel. Create something with DC. Excuse me.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you can almost trace the boom in productivity that came out of DC in the late 80s to Jeanette Kahn having the contracts changed to allow greater participation so
Yes,
that people brought their A game, you know?
yes.
Uh,
Jeanette Kahn, for those of you who don't know, was the publisher of DC, one of the most important people in comic book history that
yeah,
seems to be forgotten about.
she did a great interview with Mark Miller,
Yeah,
and I'm surprised that more people haven't talked to her about that kind of time period, and not just for the European drinking stories, but she's interesting, and she had an eye towards protecting talent.
yep,
And if you take care of the people that create the things that you make your money off of, I think you have a better chance to flourish. Um, I heard that at one point there was an attorney who looked at the Vertigo contracts and who looked at it and said, "Why are we letting these creators keep all this money?" And you can see projects that went directly from Vertigo once their contracts changed off somewhere else. So you have, Fables, I think, being the last great series that came out from Vertigo.
yeah, yeah.
That was
And
one of the last ones that where
and we
where
all know
there
how
was
happy Bill is
option
with.
money involved. Yeah.
We all know how happy Bill is with with the Fables these days.
Well, it's kind of like I've got this situation with Facebook. I had to go dig a computer out of storage to be able to get on Facebook. It's the one back over my shoulder. Um, I can't log in with Facebook in my on this computer, the one I'm using now, this iMac, because I can't make the password work, and they won't send me an email where I can reset my password. So I'll guess at passwords every once in a while. Still can't get on Facebook. What are you going to do? I created an alternate account on Facebook just to be able to reach out and talk to people from time to time. But there's sort of that kind of thing that happens within corporations. You can have a handshake deal with people, and you know that if it comes down to it, they may have your back a little. And when those people move on, you got nothing. You got no champion in your corner.
Yep.
There's nothing going on there.
I saw Bill. He was on a. I can't remember who's Bill Willingham, the creator of Fables
Yeah,
and Elementals, one of my favorite comics. And we'll get to your Kickstarter after this. Is a good segue to this.
cool.
But he said that he goes when he went back to DC to do another Fables, he didn't recognize any of the faces. And these are
Yeah,
all people that he shook hands with. They're all gone. So they either pretended not to know about the contract or legitimately didn't know about the contract. Who knows? Either way, Bill, Bill, a person I've been fans of since it's not even there anymore. I was going to dramatically pull up his Villains Vigilantes modules.
yeah, yeah.
I've been a fan of his since 82. And so I'm rooting for him. And then see he's getting screwed over and screwed over in such a stupid way. I mean, geez, getting some money off of Bill Willingham is better than not getting any money off of Bill Willingham. You know what I mean? This guy would have produced more stuff.
Well,
Jeez.
a lot of the people that have staff jobs, they struggle to get their work done because back in the old days, you would just kind of trust things that work out. Now you have to sort of document every step in the process. You don't want to be that guy who loses a Batman cover and you can't find it, and you have to pay to get somebody to do it again for you, that kind of stuff. Um, so there's a lot of internal paperwork you have to do. There's a lot of meetings. I had a friend that was in DC editorial for a while, and you know, it's a challenge. You need to bring on artists and make them happy and get them to do their best work. And then when you're in the middle of a run, you find out, and this is the truth. Uh, I helped Willingham write a couple of issues of Robin, and in that issue, the Teen Titans had broken into Lex Luthor's lab to find something to save Superboy, and we turned in our second issue, and the editor got a hold of us and said, "Oh, Wonder Girl's losing her powers." I said, "Really? How does she know that?" She just does. Part of the event. Like, okay. So, when you're a creative working in that environment where you're going to end up telling stories about other people's characters, at some point, they'll throw you a curveball. So I have sympathy for them on that end. They have a lot to manage. There's somebody who I worked for inking some Batman pages a long, long time ago. and he's now in a position of management at DC. And when I first talked to him after I turned the pages in, first thing he led was, "Yeah, that's cool. I have no hiring authority. I'm in no position to hire new people." So I mean, they get if you look at the amount of people that are making crowdfunding books and then look at the limited amount of slots at DC and Marvel, you know that those editors at DC and Marvel are just getting bombarded with stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll
Everybody
defend them a
still loves
little bit.
comics.
Yeah, it's everybody wants to draw Batman that one time,
Right.
but it is a tough job to do. But that said, if you're going to buy lottery tickets, which is part of what being a creative is, you want to buy the ones that have the biggest chance to pay out. And getting no royalties on something you create for Marvel and DC is not nearly as good as making a little bit of money on back issue sales on the stuff you create.
Yeah.
That's where we are.
Yeah.
I had a chat with Bill Willingham because I wanted to get this recolored or this colored version of Blackheart and Valentine out in front of people because I thought it was a cool book, and I thought that not enough people saw it the first time around. So,
I saw it. I loved it the first time.
cool.
This was a part of Pantheon, correct? Am I
Yeah.
remembering correctly?
These
Pantheon was by Lone Star Comics, and it
Yeah,
was
that was
original
me.
superheroes. Some of them looked familiar, but whatever. And I absolutely loved it. Oh man, I think it was 13 issues.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
And some stories that ran in other books, and this collects stories that ran in other titles because
I'm gonna make this big just so everybody can see this.
yeah, cool. We liked the Blackheart character and wanted to do more with him. And this was Bill's last thing that he did, I think, before going to work for Vertigo. So I think he was probably writing some of the Merv Pumpkinhead stories as he was working on this.
Yeah, I think this is his last superhero work, right?
His last, not he did a run on Robin for a while. I was there at the meeting with
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
DiDio.
I'm missing my time up. Yeah.
Yeah, DiDio said, Robin's the fourth most popular character at DC. Wonder Woman, Superman, Batman, and Robin. So everybody knows who he is, and that was his pitch. And Willingham, I think, wrote 2 or 3 years worth of that stuff.
Oh, he
Eh,
also did Shadow Pact.
yeah,
Yeah.
I inked some backgrounds on an issue plus of I think on an issue, and then did some work on a cover for Shadow Pact because a deadline snuck up on him once upon a time. But that happens when you're working on projects. But yeah, scroll on down a little bit more. That's Ben Dunn's new project is Kendra,
Oh, okay. Okay.
and that launched a few days ago. So we've talked about doing a sequel to the Punchline Tomorrow Girl book, and it sold well enough, and Ben likes doing it enough. So I think we're going to do another one. I just have to find a way to execute the idea I've got knocking around. But I did talk with Willingham recently because you can't go back to a press with a guy's book unless you talk to him first.
Yeah.
So I talked to him, and he has an interesting view on rights and distribution of those between creators because it's reasonable and it's not the kind of thing you hear a lot. Um, he asked me, he said, "Do you know what Dave Sims' royalty plan is or ownership plan is with Gerhard?" I said, "No." He said that Dave Sim told Gerhard that he owns 100% of Cerebus, and that Sim owns 100% of Cerebus. And if they want to go out and do their own thing with Cerebus, you know, go with God, go make something, go make money. And that's sort of the deal that we have with the Pantheon characters. So I sent him a review copy of this, and I know that he likes the color work on one of them pretty well. I had two colorists work on this because one guy was more reliable than the other. So it's a fun book, and it's kind of been a passion project of mine. So I bankrolled the coloring for it out of my pocket, and we'll print some, and then, maybe into summer next year, plus it'll come out from AP.
Okay. Yeah. I got to say, these are original stories, or these are from Pantheon?
Those are the reprinted stories that ran in Heroic Tales. There were two stories. One's A Matter of Heart, and the other one is Victim of Fate. Victim of Fate being my favorites. My favorite there. There's also a 40-page story about Blackheart and Fandango going down to Mexico and fighting the Mexican death god, who's you know, a bad guy. So
Yeah.
they have
It's hard
they
to
had
be a
done that
good guy
have a
when
little
you're the
adventure.
death god. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. When you're the death god, you get lots of bad PR. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Um, so it's those three stories, and it's 60 pages, and it's a pretty fun book. I really missed working with Bobby Diaz. He did a new cover, and I inked that, and that's the cover there on screen. Dangerous Dave Sharp, the world's most busy letterer, designed and executed the logo for me based on some notes. And you know, I'm looking forward to being able to take these to shows and sell them to people because it's fun. Now there are a couple of swear words in there, and Blackheart says some stuff that's stunningly sexist at some point, but it's a fun book.
Yeah. I enjoyed the stories that I had already read already. I really liked. So I'm glad to see these coming out. Because comic story was your comic was Heroic Tales, which
Yeah.
I reached out to you people. I know people are gonna be like, oh yeah. I have my comic is called Heroic Tales. I reached out to Bill, and you said it was okay to use the title.
Yeah.
Yes. So somebody
Yeah,
already
yeah. No, I'm
you know,
cool with that. That's sort of how we met, and I don't really have claim to it. There was a Golden Age book called Heroic Tales back when comics sold in huge numbers,
and
and
Bill,
I was just totally stealing that. So I can't really say don't use that thing I stole.
how dare you use the thing I stole? And
Exactly.
also, Bill is also my letterer, and it's getting lettered right now. So for my Heroic Tales is, oh
Yeah.
my God, it's getting close to crunch time. This is the part that gets me nervous: is the pre-press and printing. Everything else up to this point was fun,
Yeah.
creative. Now it's,
Everything else takes a lot of time. The pre-press takes a little bit. The printing usually goes pretty fast.
I
It's the
know.
delivery. If you
Oh
take them
God.
down to Kinko's, you can have them this afternoon.
Oh
You
my
put them
God.
on
My
a boat
stomach
from
hurts,
Shanghai,
Bill.
it takes longer. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's happening. It's happening. And now we're already working on issue two. Oh God.
That's good.
And I have a side project working on, and
The work never stops, does it?
yeah, well, it's fun. I'm talking about my comic when you have a comic, but I was on a panel with Tonic Mole, and we were talking about the worst ideas for comic books. And I said,
That's awesome.
as a joke, I go, I have an idea for this guy Eddie, who's a comic book collector, and he has to move out of his parents' house. And everybody laughed. It was supposed to be a joke, and then Tonic Mole messaged me, he goes, "That could be the best comic book ever written." And me and him bounced ideas back, and
Yeah.
to the point now where I'm excited. To the point now, it's going to have two different artists because Eddie is doomed is the name of the comic. He's moving out of his parents' house, and then he goes to the comic book store because he's to commiserate with his buddy who owns the comic book store, and he finds out that the Crisis on Infinite Earths is happening. So his comic book world is also ending.
His comic worlds are colliding.
Right. So there's no consolation. There's what do you mean? Everything is ending. His real world is changing, and his comic book world is changing. So
Yeah.
I can't do DC. I can't do the Crisis. So Top Comics has the Doomed Earth series is coming out, and all the Golden Age characters and all the Silver Age characters, their time is over. That he categorically understands everything about them, and it doesn't
See,
matter
those
anymore.
those um those golden age characters, there's a lot of those that are not owned by big corporations,
Right? A lot of public
and those are
domain.
fair game to use.
Well, I'm making up my own stuff. I don't want to use anybody's else because using public domain also comes with baggage or whatever. So I'm making up tongue in cheek characters like
Yeah, yeah.
phenomenal man instead of Superman.
There you
You
go.
know, and then one of them, because the whole prop like Top Comics, they were supposed to be like corporations like, oh, what the girls like, what do girls like? We got to make a comic book for girls. So some executives, they're like cats and they're like nurses. So one of the characters is Cat Nurse. And Cat Nurse, she wears a nurse's outfit, but she's also a cat. And then she wanders around like, will I ever find true love? Because that's what these executives thought girls wanted.
Is it less ridiculous than Night Nurse? I don't think so.
Well, it is, yeah. I, I'm probably one of the few. I got all 4 issues of Night Nurse. That's one of my funnier videos. If anybody wants to check that out,
I like that she ended up being in the mainstream Marvel universe as your what was the analog analog to that, the Doctor in the Batman universe, the kindly
right.
old.
She ended up like dating Doctor Strange, and she's the one that you go to at night, and she's like the mob doctor for the superheroes. I love that concept, and
that would be fun. Oh, I've seen this before. Now you can be in rehab and traction with a lot of casts, or we can put this thing on you from Doctor Strange. I'm not exactly sure what it does, but I'm pretty sure it's going to help.
I want to make someone a comic book guy from The Simpsons. Yeah, super, but he has to. He's okay. That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. So what I was saying about this, I've been showing my friends, because Oscar Carreno, who's the colorist in my comic, he's one of the color. I have 2 colorists.
He's good.
Yeah, he's so good. He's so good. And then I started sending him concepts for like my horrible drawings, and he started making these Golden Age and then Silver Age versions of my character, and I had to share with people. And Brian Bauer of Wolf Bats, he goes, "You got to make a comic book of these characters." So I said, "Let me make Idiot's Doom, and then when that's done, maybe like hire writers to give the Bill Williams spin on Cat Nurse." Or Robot Gorilla,
something like that.
Yeah, because in the Silver Age DC, they said having a gorilla was printing money, and Robot Gorilla, geez, that's
pretty good.
So I'm gonna have like silly Silver Age whimsical, and the tie-in is Top Comics is the name of the comic book company in my Heroic Tales universe. So the Patriarch's kids will read Top Comics.
Yeah, when I was lettering that first page, I was like, what era is this? We've got a 30s era gangster,
right?
We've got blimps. When is this? I'm like, oh, I'll make a joke and see if it works. And you were like, yes, 2024. I was like, oh, okay, I'll fix it.
Yeah, that's just it. Is there's something wrong with Science City that causes people to all of a sudden wake up one day and think they're a 30s gangster, or another guy to wake up one day. I invent robot bugs. I keep playing with the idea. What is wrong with Gotham City that people dress up like clowns and people dress up like penguins, but they don't do it in Baltimore?
No, at some point you would think, if I'm going to be a supervillain, the 2 places in the world I shouldn't move to are like Metropolis,
right,
or Gotham, because those towns are just ass deep in superheroes.
Right, Superman, I'm not going to get away with. He probably won't beat me up.
Yeah,
but I won't get away with it.
Batman's going to break my fingers.
Yeah, he's going to break my face, and I'm not going to get away with it. So
yeah, I guess it's
Baltimore. I don't think who's the Baltimore superhero. There is none. Ta-da!
Yeah, there you go.
So I always thought about there has to be something wrong with Gotham City. So that's going to be if going along in another issue, we're going to understand what's wrong with Science City. That's producing.
I think they've sort of alluded to that in the DC universe, essentially saying that Gotham is cursed.
Right.
That it's a large open air lunatic asylum.
Right. In issue 2, I'm hinting that ley lines. So Science City is outside of Arizona in my comic book, and it was supposed to be like an ecological perfect city. Like this architect, Eon Strange is the name of the architect. He designed. He's also a magician. So issue 3, I think, is going to have a map, or maybe issue 2, if we have enough room. It's going to have a map, and it's actually a magic sigil. If you see when you were inking the pages, there's the statue of the Colossus of Rhodes. That was supposed to be a spire. In the exact center of Science City, there's a spire, and that focuses all the magic energy gathered by the ley lines going along the magic lines of the city itself. But Philip Manning, the designer of Science City, put in his own tweaks and a monument to himself. So this magic that was supposed to generate perfection and harmony and peace is causing people to wake up like 30s gangsters. Hey, I'm gonna go rob a bank. That guy was a construction foreman who just woke up one day. I'm gonna rob banks. And now the patriarch has to deal with crazy Batman type villains because
Yeah.
because the magic spell created by the architect, who may or may not be a lunatic, was foiled by the industrialist, who is definitely a supervillain. Because politicians, industrialists, this could be all the bad guys. But again, you don't really see that too much in issue number one, but issue two kind of
Thing
builds.
is, for a universe to be somewhat cohesive, it helps to know why things happen in a certain way. And I think that in comics, those things sort of grew up organically. But the
Right.
way that writing's done now, you sort of need that foundation. The thing is, you also have to be able to get in and out in like a good 5 or 8 page sequence and kind of demonstrate what everything's going to be about.
Yep, I agree. My first script was just world building the script, and my friends were like, "Nobody cares about these characters. If nobody
Yeah.
cares about the characters, you don't, like Punchline. There's some great world building. Like we get introduced to the two main characters in the first issue, Versima and Mel, and then later on we start to. I don't want to spoil it, but we learn that there's a bigger world,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what your writing and Punchline isn't, whether or not it's successful or not. I'll find out in a couple of months, but I'm starting out kind of focused here. In every issue, I kind of want to pull the focus back a little bit. Oh, that's why
Yeah.
I had this crazy 30s gangster.
That's a way to do world building. In my case, I had that first scene pretty firmly in mind, that first like 10 or 12 page sequence where you've got a gut shot superhero waiting to die
Yeah,
and runs into somebody. So that's a way to start out a story. I'm working on a new project, and I started writing, roughing out the first few pages, and I didn't like what I was getting because it was a training sequence. There's a young hero who's frustrated he doesn't get to act enough, and I was like, "Oh, this doesn't work." So I flipped the point of view, and I have some urban outdoorsmen making a spike strip so that they can crash cars and rob the people in them. And that's when our hero shows up and punches people, and it goes on from there. I was like, you you have to get people's attention and make it interesting and unique in those first few pages for people to stick around, because there's, like I said, so many draws on your time now.
yeah, yeah. Do you think are we in like a nadir of comics, or are we, you know, is it just changing? Is it ending? Is it a renaissance?
So I write screenplays from time to time. I had a screenplay make it to the quarterfinals in the Stage 32 contest recently, and there's enough money in screenwriting and producing things that people watch for that to get a lot of headlines. And the headline over there was Netflix wins the streaming wars. All the smaller companies, when I say smaller, I mean like Paramount, Sony. Actually, Sony didn't compete with them that much. They stayed in their lane and were pretty successful. But the other companies tried to compete and were unsuccessful. And I think that what we're having now is we're having the streaming effect work on comics, and DC and Marvel are not using those to the best of their abilities. The closest thing that you're going to get to having something like Comixology, where you can read digital comics every week, is going to Amazon. There's no reason in the world that Marvel and DC shouldn't be more aggressive about selling their digital backlog to people that want to read comics. So one of the things that's happened is you've got a lot of independent creators that have harnessed the internet technology to make their own stuff to be wildly successful, or to kind of middlingly move along. Ethan's a good example of somebody who was pretty successful right off the bat. Eric July was also very successful right off the bat. And like I talked about earlier, because those guys don't have a creative outlet by working at DC or Marvel, they make their own stuff and they siphon away energy and attention from the bigger companies. So what's happened is if you've got essentially the artist peasants are revolting, and Marvel and DC don't really know what to do about it yet.
I heard rumors that Marvel and DC will be crowdfunding soon, sooner rather than later.
Well, if you,
I mean, we already saw
here's
the
everybody sees these big things. I'm sorry if I'm stepping on your comment, but
okay,
um, that GI Joe funding by Hasbro, they raised what $3 million,
yeah.
and Larry Hama got not dollar one out of it. But that's the kind of money that will make DC and Marvel look up and go, "Oh, what if we did this giant X-Men omnibus and we paid Byrne a ridiculous amount of money to use an 8-page story? What if we did this and that happened and there was
I,
a
I,
there
I
was
don't want to buy $100 omnibus to get an 8-page story, but I probably will because I'm such a
yeah,
fan.
there's that kind of incentive that you can put in those projects. And the people that are in charge of digital strategies at the bigger companies are failing, in my opinion, because those companies are facing sustainability issues because the next generation of creators are not signing up to lose all their property.
I don't know. I just look at a series of missteps by Marvel. Like they had $1 billion movies.
Yeah,
Everybody, including my grandmother, now knows who Groot is. A
yeah,
character that was so obscure.
yeah.
And now everybody everybody loves Groot. And then you go to the comic book stores, they didn't have movie accurate characters. They were swapping everything. You go in, Chris Hemsworth is cool and good looking, swinging a hammer, you go into the store and it's a woman. Where's Thor? They did, and then they just did it again. Deadpool just came out. It's the movie that they're saying is saving the cinema this year. And then you go into the comic book the day. I'm not even joking. The day the Deadpool movie came out, they killed Deadpool and replaced it with a woman. It's like I could see incompetence, but now I'm starting to see this is design. And I'm not a business guy. What is going on? I just
There
don't understand.
there are strategies that work in a counterintuitive fashion, but what they're doing is the same thing they've been doing for the past 15 years, which is, I think, obviously not working as well as it could.
I know I forget who it was. I think it was Kurt Busiek, who's one of my favorite comic book writers.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah, he said that sometimes you can't give the audience what they want. Sometimes you have to give them the exact opposite, and they don't realize that that's what they want. And in comic books, that's a perfect example. Like, I didn't like that Spider-Man black costume, but there's no denying it was a sensation, and it made a mark. I'm trying to think other times, like they I didn't like Spider-Man and Wolverine joining the X-Men, but I guess I'm in the minority. Everybody liked that, and then Miles Morales. I guess I was wrong, whatever, but the Superior Spider-Man, I'm one of the few people that actually like that. Spider-Man was, but it's comic books. They give you the something opposite, and then they bring it back, and then you're like, yay, it's back. And but it's no different than the hero falling down the steps and struggling, except it's a comic book, so it takes a couple of months for him to
The
get back
thing
up the
is,
steps.
if you want to talk about Marvel in that case, they went 30 to 40 years having the characters essentially on brand all the time.
Right.
And the last 20 years, the characters have been off brand, or like a pendulum, it swings back and forth. And, being counterintuitive or going against the grain works sometimes. But in this case, you know, it's hard to track. As an example, my last gig, I ran the comic book department at a big collectible store. You want to try filing a Spider-Man comic book? You want to try looking up Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man issue 5? You'll get pages and pages of them. Now, at one point, it was because of all the different volume numbers. Now, it's for the 15 to 18 variant covers on those books. Um, and the variants are probably a good thing, I'm not sure how long that's sustainable, but the sales generated by variants are helping those places keep the doors open. I
Yeah.
think what they need is a reinvention, sort of like the way that Palmiotti and Casada revamp things with Marvel Knights. I think that that
Mar-
needs a breath
Marvel
of
Knights
fresh
was
air.
good. Marvel Knights was really good. I, that, I liked Marvel Knights. Yeah, I like what you said. Excuse me, that comics were on brand for 30 years and now they're off brand. But it's like while they were on brand, Marvel was selling. Guys were lettering comics and buying houses or raising kids and sending
Yeah.
kids to college. Now, literally, people are writing the X-Men and begging on Twitter for money. I
Yeah.
just don't understand. I mean, that's
Well,
I
page
guess,
rates haven't gone up in 30 years either.
yeah,
So that's part of it. But if you tried to take and I like Zdarsky's stuff, uh, but if you tried to explain the plot of the recent Batman stuff to somebody, that's gonna take some doing. You know, Batman's subconscious built it built a fully functioning other personality, and that personality built a killer robot, and then the robot went rogue. It's like, what are you talking about? It may make sense within the context of the story, but if you try to explain that to somebody, it takes a roadmap.
I've told this story. My sister has 5 kids, and and she reads to the kids, and every once in a while they pick out a comic book, and she's like, anything but a comic book. She goes, I don't know what's going on. It makes no sense. They're hard to read, and but keep in mind these are newer comics. Like I'd like to think like give her like a Stan and Jack comic. She could probably read the whole thing and get the whole story. Like you know,
She may wear herself out. Stan was pretty wordy.
yeah, pretty wordy, but at least you understood. She's like, I don't know what's going on. They're referring to people who aren't in this like, like this whole deconstruction. I don't know. I don't know. But
It's
yes,
tough,
you're
and
right.
there's some blocking and tackling that still needs to happen. When people show up in a scene, they need to address each other by their name so that we know who the hell they are. Simple stuff like that. I mean, you can put labels floating around the rest of your team, but
The old school DC stuff, just their face with their name under it, like on a banner on the
yeah,
splash.
yeah,
Star Spangled Kid.
yeah.
Yeah,
But it's there's the Silver Age guys were big on saying every issue is somebody's first issue,
right.
and you don't have to go full Chris Claremont where somebody restates the X-Men's mission statement for every issue for 3 years. But there's a way that you can work these things in as the characters debate what they're going to do next, where you make it entertaining.
Yeah, I like with Logic. I gave up arguing with new comic fans, like telling me, "Oh, you just don't understand Spider-Man, or you don't understand the Fantastic Four." I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. I only have every issue of Fantastic Four
Yeah,
since #1, but I don't understand them. You do." One of my pet peeves is a and I'm going to throw one of my friends under the bus, but he was
good.
just, oh, I got this comic, and it's the best comic ever, and I'm like, oh, really? What are the odds that they've been making comic books for 70 years, and the one you bought just happened to be the best comic book ever made, you know?
Yeah.
And then they're going to lecture me on comic book quality. I'm like, well, yeah, all
Well,
right.
it's tough. I appreciate that people write for collections, but picking up part one of a 10-part story, it's kind of a big financial commitment.
Yes,
That
the
first
price of
issue better
comic
be
books has
great.
to be, and
Yeah.
that's to talk about my comic. That's why it's $10. It's 2 complete stories. I that's the model I would want to go on. If I have to tell a longer story, I'm going to make a longer comic
Yeah.
because let's face it, asking $35 for a comic book. Just recently, this was my biggest criticism, and again, I'm not mentioning names to hurt people's feelings, but I paid $35 for a comic book, and it gave me nothing. And when I asked that creator, they said, "Oh, you got to buy issue #2." I said, "So this is $70." Like, I don't, I'm not a millionaire. I'm a
Yeah.
blue collar guy, and now, not to cry poverty, but I haven't got paid in 7 weeks, guys. Like
Yeah.
I'm not spending $70 on a comic book or 2 comic books, and I still don't know anything about your guy, what's going on, what his powers are, what his name is. So I'd like to think in my comic, you're probably the only person who can answer if I'm successful or not, because you're lettering the thing. I'd like to think that you know who my guy is, what he's about, and maybe not everything about him by the end of the issue.
I would hope so. I mean, the first scene plays out demonstrating that he has superpowers and he's clever and he cares about people. That's enough to get going.
Yeah, that's more than the
More
$70
than you get
comic.
everywhere. Yeah.
But thank you for saying that.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so nervous. I'm so nervous about my comic.
Well, making art is hard. Releasing it into the world sometimes is even harder
Yeah.
because not only do you have the im- not only do you have the instinct to try to make it perfect, there's also a little bit of anxiety that comes when you're about to have people at large judge you and judge your work. So it's
I
tough.
was tweaking the dialogue seconds before I sent it to you,
Yeah.
and I was yesterday, my friend Jimmy, I don't know if he's in the chat, but he was at the barbecue and he's one of the guys I bounce ideas off of.
Yeah.
And he was like amazed. I was like, yeah, I took the script, wrote the script, sent the script to Renzo to draw. Renzo, it's slightly different because he has a different perspective, and something I called for 7 panels, he may turned it to 6 panels. I said, so I
Yes.
got to rewrite the dialogue to match what Renzo actually drew. I said, and in doing that, I had a better idea and I changed it and blah, blah, blah. I said, and then I took that script and I rewrote it just to dialogue because Bill doesn't need to know there's a green car in the distance, blah, blah. That's just going to get in the way of him lettering. So I made what I call a lettering script. And I said, and that I wrote 3 times because some of the dialogue didn't work now that I read it out loud. So he goes, so you wrote that like 6 times? I'm like, more than 6 times, and
Yeah.
I don't know how many times because I had the Word document up and I'm changing this balloon, but I'm keeping this balloon, but I'm changing. I said, so I don't know how many times I changed things. I said, but I had to say, go. I had to send it because I never would have sent it to.
You have to turn things loose eventually so that they can be judged or whatever.
I,
One thing that I do, one thing that I do that may help a little bit is that after you write that first draft and assuming you like it enough to share and you get somebody to pencil it and those pages get inked and eventually all this stuff comes back, you can just take that script that you sent to the penciler and just go through and tweak the dialogue and
yes,
captions in there and share that around. I mean, I'm used to seeing full scripts, I'm used to seeing notes, all of those work, but what you want to do is you want to streamline your process so that you don't repeat the same steps endlessly. You want to break new ground every day. While it's comforting to go back and tweak old stuff, eventually you want to put in some new scenes, add some new stuff.
yeah. I in redoing what I call the dialogue script that I sent to you, I was like, oh, I could add in some foreshadowing over here. If I change the way he says this over here, I think this will make this more clear. So, but then sooner or later, I'm going to have it where Guido shoots first.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You got to stop.
You got to finish. So in my case, I had the same kind of thing happen. I wrote a female James Bond project set in a high fantasy world with a whole bunch of John Wick moments, basically 3 big action set pieces where a lot of people don't come out safely on the other side. And I sent that script over to it's a script for a feature. I sent that out for coverage. Coverage means you pay somebody some money and they're supposed to be a professional story person and they tear apart your story and give you five or 6 pages of notes and send it back to you. So I sent it to this person and it came back with a grade that was higher than anything I've ever gotten. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. There were some notes. I addressed the notes, did a second draft, sent that out to that same person again, and who liked it even more the second time around. The score in the high 90s, not, quite high enough to recommend and put your own reputation on the line, but just about. So I did another round of notes, sent that out. That person was busy. I'm going through a coverage service. I think I'm using We Screenplay for that, which is pretty good. They've got a quick turnaround and they're relatively inexpensive. So they sent it to somebody new who hated it,
Oh
who
God.
who just took a huge leak all over it. And
Uh,
I was like, "Oh, this is not what I was expecting." I was expecting, a pat on the back. Instead, I got a what a effing mess this is. So when you get response from critics, it helps to take a look at it with kind of a clear eye. And even your critics that write all the time and create all the time, they aren't always articulate about why things don't work. So I looked at, well, is it fair to have this person do that at this point without having laid the proper groundwork? So it gives me a chance to go through and look at something all over again and make the fixes that you need to make stronger art, because you can learn something even from you know your friends, your enemies, your whoever's. So in that case I was like, all right, I just got a really shitty review. How am I gonna fix this thing? And it was a bucket of cold water, but you can learn things from bad reviews too.
I my original script, I wish I deleted it because I was embarrassed, but I sent it to Fred, and I was just, here you go. And I'm in my mind, I'm
Yeah.
like, John Burns is going to come out of retirement because this is the best script and he's going to want to draw my comic book and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And they hated it.
Yeah.
They were nice. They wouldn't, but they were
Polite.
like, this is just world building the comic. I don't care about any of these characters. There's like,
Yeah.
I had like 40 characters in the story, you know what I mean? And I'm like, and I knew better. That's what got me so mad. And then I rewrote it and I sent it to somebody else. And now I sent it to my friend who's a PhD psychiatrist, never
Yeah.
read a comic book and all, and she hated the other one. And I'm like, I can't win. I guess, and I got discouraged. I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. So then I sent the revert back to the original. Like, okay, this is a comic book. I'd work with this. And then I realized sometimes you got to consider where the criticism. This is a person who just doesn't like comic books, doesn't get comic books.
Yeah.
Like, I'll make jokes with this person. The person's like, like, so I was like, okay, so
Do you feel like you're being judged when you make jokes with your psychiatrist friend?
yeah,
A
exactly,
little
yeah,
bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
a little, and then
Oh, you find that funny.
I'll say
Interesting.
something like humiliating that happened to me, like not even a joke, and then,
Yeah.
oh my god, that's so. Oh, that wasn't a joke. So you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
my point being is, it's good to, like, I'm glad she read it because I was ready to trash everything, and then I got a different perspective, and I realized, okay, sometimes the critic is just doesn't get it.
Yeah.
Sometimes this, my wife loves it, but then again, she's a supportive wife. I love everything that she writes, and I'm sure that if you were to look at me and my wife's writings, you'd be like, you guys really should just could concentrate on cooking. You know what I mean? But because we're too close to home, whatever. So,
Yeah.
but I just would like to say that I'm the guys who read it and pointed me in the right direction. So, oh man. And then the funny thing is, I had a friend send me a script, and I didn't want to say anything because I was just going to tear this apart. I hated it. But I like my friend. So finally,
Yeah.
after literally 18 days, they're like, did you read it? I said, yeah, that bad. And I said, I'm your friend, and I'm trying to help. And we talked on the phone. I'm like, I think we were on the phone for 7 hours. And he was like, that was great. This is such good feedback. You know what I mean? And he's like, I think
Yeah.
I needed that. He goes, I think I knew there was something wrong.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and I said, you're doing the exact opposite that Marvel's doing. Marvel's taking one comic book and turning it into 7 issues. I said, you took this epic and crushed it into one comic book. And I said, look at all of this good drama right over here that you just glossed over with a sentence.
Yeah.
I said, this, and he was like, so I don't know. I felt bad because he tossed out all of his art. The comic was 75% done. I'm like,
Ooh, that's rough. It's at some point you have to let scenes breathe a little. You have to let them, let things happen. It is cool to build world building documents. It's not always necessary to share them.
right.
I mean, even Grant Morrison couldn't pull that off with Multiversity. You
Oh,
know,
I'm so glad you said that.
he,
I'm reading the last issue I'm going out to lunch with my wife, and then I'm going to come
yeah,
back and I'm going to read the last issue. It started off so good.
yeah,
Oh my god, that Shazam issue was amazing.
yeah.
There was a couple issues, and then I tell you, there was one issue that was just a map of the multiverse, and I'm
Mhm.
like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I make myself read every comic book that I buy.
Yeah.
And that was one comic book I was just like looking at the words. Okay, I technically read that. And I went to the next page. I'm looking at all the, like my brain
Yeah.
wasn't registering it, but I tricked myself because it was just
Well,
so
it
prepared.
that is DC publishing Morrison's world building document, which, is the kind of thing you could just keep internally. But how great was that Chris Sprouse issue?
Oh, which one was that? That was the
It's got Dr. Fate. I'm a big
oh
Dr.
yes,
Fate fan. Yeah.
that was good. Um,
Chris draws, dude's a
I
magician.
love Chris Spas's art. Yeah.
So one of the things that I did recently is I went up to DFW and helped my old mentor. I spent years as an inking assistant before I started writing. And Keith has this book called Hammerlock that uh, Chris had penciled and Keith had inked, and I inked backgrounds on some of the later issues. And the rights reverted back to him. It was published by DC under an earlier contract, so they got the rights back. And Keith's always wanted to do something with those, so I helped him with some art corrections and getting all the pages scanned and ready to go. But that's the first place I saw Chris's pencils, and his stuff's great. It's pretty
I
amazing.
first saw Chris. He did Supreme with Alan Moore. That's the
Yeah,
first time I saw him. Those are so good.
those books are great, and those books are hilarious. And I straight up stole a gag from Alan Moore in the for the Punchline Tomorrow Girl book. There's this scene where, the world beating barbarian character is at the White House, and Supreme shows up to kill him, and he says, Supreme, now I'm going to murder you. And he comes over and he goes, "You've got to get me out of here. These politicians are the worst people I've ever met." So they have essentially an above the line conversation and then a whispered conversation, "Get me out of here, but don't embarrass me. Make this
Yeah.
look good."
Punch me and send me flying.
Yes, I would really like to leave now. Help me, Supreme, help me. But
How good
you
were
go back and you look at even the stuff that you would think of as kind of cast off material by Alan Moore or Morrison to an extent, and they're just amazing. It's
I
amazing
think
stuff.
Grant Morrison is amazing, but I think he's the kind of guy that would do best with a good editor guiding him and maybe sandpapering stuff. Because I
I
think
would be interested to know what the guardrails were when he was doing the Batman stuff.
like
You can do this, but you can't do that.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
like his Animal Man stuff was phenomenal. His Doom Patrol stuff was out there, but it was phenomenal. And now I wonder, I call it the Jack Nicholson problem. Like, okay, Bill, me and you are going to make a movie. You're my producer, I'm the director, and boom, I got Jack Nicholson. That would totally destroy my movie because how am I going to direct this guy? You got one take, boa. I'm out of
Yeah.
here. I'm going to my trailer. Well, that's what we got to use. You know what I mean? I think only Martin Scorsese could control a Jack Nicholson and get a good performance.
Maybe I heard an awesome story about that kind of dynamic last year at Austin Film Fest. I went to a screening of American Fiction, and the writer Cord Jefferson was there, and that dude's smart. He wrote some really interesting episodes of the Watchmen TV show, and he was a little tentative going in directing Jeffrey Wright because Jeffrey Wright's been on a lot of stuff and he's a great actor. And at some point, he heard through the grapevine that Wright would like a little more input because he kind of knows what you want to see in your project. So I think that, the best of creators can take some guidance and channel that into make great art. It's just a question of, you know, can you put your ego aside long enough to serve the project? And, you would hope that that's the case.
Yeah, but I wonder if they were just like with multiversity, Grant Morrison, I'm doing this, and then just like, yeah, fine, do whatever you want, because some of those issues were unreadable.
Yeah.
Like
Well, they were. I know somebody who calls Morrison's work strange for the sake of being strange.
yes,
And there's a bit of that in the multiversity stuff. Uh, I think the interesting thing to have had in the pipeline would be, why don't we get a few multiversity books ready to go? And if this project is successful, we can launch a couple of months later with some of these new multiversity planets and have some interesting books that we can make. If they I think if they had the courage to follow through on that, you could take sort of some blueprint and go make your own things.
yeah. Like I look at Lost. Lost was weird and didn't pull it together.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm kind of harsh on that because anybody could just make a weird story.
Yeah.
But your weird story pulled together at the end, that's the cleverness. And I know I'm in the minority of this, but like I kind of stopped watching Twin Peaks because it was like, this is just getting weirder and weirder and weirder.
Weird for the sake of being weird.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like it like I don't know if you ever watched that show Wilfred
No.
with the guy, same guy who played Bilbo. Why can't
Yeah.
I think the actor's name? But
Yeah.
it is weird, and it gets off the rail. But the last two episodes, they pull it together to the point. I think it's one of the most brilliant shows ever on TV. Like the first season, you're laughing at everything. The second season, it's uncomfortable laughing. Third season, it's almost a horror show. You're like, oh, and then
Yeah.
the fourth season, that you find out what's really happening, and it's like you're almost crying. Like, oh my,
Yeah.
like I'm trying not to spoil it. The only other show do you ever see a show called Kevin Could F Himself?
Yes.
Oh, what did you think of that? I
I
loved
thought
it.
it was a great high concept and it wasn't executed as well as it could have been.
I thought I really liked it. I was biting at first, I was laughing, and then it turned into a horror show towards the end. My only problem was, and I still say it's worth watching, the last episode, the resolution was a little wonky, but
Yeah.
I'm but
I'm a big fan of watching TV pilots, and Lost was weird for the sake of being weird. It
right.
is really hard to beat that Lost TV pilot as a pilot. That pilot is great.
Yeah, but
I decided to try some new stuff. I've been watching Midsummer Murders for about a year and a half, and I've had it with the British countryside for a while, I think. But I watched the pilot for
I
a
want to
sh-
make a British show, just good day, and it's just good day, and they just
there's a
get
lot
weirder,
of that.
your teeth get crazier, the cups get bigger, and that's it. That's the whole show.
Yeah. I watched the pilot for a show called The Old Man. It's on Hulu.
There's so
Jeff
many good shows.
Bridges is sort of coming out of retirement as a spy, and it's got Jeff Bridges and John Lithgow just chewing scenery. It is the pilot was pretty good. Pilot definitely pulls you in and makes you want to see more.
I always joke around that you're a screenwriter. Maybe you could make this happen for me, but I want to get like Jeff Goldblum, Gary Oldman, Crispin Glover, John Lithgow, like all actors like of that, and redo 12 Angry Men. Just
If you look at the original with Henry Fonda, the actors in that movie, that's a fucking murderer's row of character actors.
I forget Jack Klugman's even in it. Yeah,
You've got E.G. Marshall in there. It is a great show. Yeah, that's crazy.
it's Jeff Goldblum, Willem Dafoe.
So, are you
Crispin
watching?
Glover.
Are
I'm
you
trying to think
watching
of
Slow Horses?
No, I don't watch. If I find myself wanting to watch TV, I read more comics because, like I said, I got 18 to 20 long boxes of comics that I got to catch up on. So
I would recommend Slow Horses. It is a show. I think it may be on Amazon. It's it's a British based TV show based on some novels. And here's the pitch. MI5 is the home for super secret agents. The ones that are not any good, they get sent off to this place called Slough House so that they'll be so depressed that they end up quitting and saving the British government the embarrassment of having to fire spies from time to time. So you've got spies that have totally fucked up their life at some point, and they accidentally catch real cases from time to time. So it's sort of like a spy version of the Bad News Bears,
The
and they
loser
can't get
spies.
along. And it's a bunch of loser spies. That's right. That's a better way to encapsulate it. But Gary Oldman is their boss, and he's a sort of retired master spy. He's a complete asshole, and
And he does
he's
that well.
hilarious. Yeah, he's up for all kinds of acting awards and Slow Horses, and it's a really entertaining show. And the seasons, they've put out 4 seasons in 3 years because they're basing them on books. And I think Oldman's come out and said, "This is so much fun. This is like the last thing I'm going to do." You know, he's talking about leaving acting on a high point, which I never believe an actor when they say
Yeah,
that. But it's a great show,
it's
and
hard
the
to go.
episodes are fair. I mean, the seasons are fairly short too. It's not like
Well, it's
I'm
British
gonna
TV.
watch.
There's like
Yeah,
6 episodes a season.
yeah,
I just, my wife and I just did everything Ricky Gervais did.
yeah,
So we started with Afterlife.
yeah,
Oh my God! Talk about a show that has you laughing and crying in the same episode.
yeah,
I really thought it was brilliant. And then it was tough to watch with Derek. You know, he plays a mentally handicapped character. So
yes,
the first episode, you're like, he's acting. Like,
yeah,
but if you could get through the first episode, it is so worth it. And then
yeah.
we just watched Extras. Have you seen Extras?
I've seen a big chunk of extras.
Oh my God,
It is
Extras!
uh, it is an office level of cringe,
Yeah,
but
he likes his
it's entertaining.
uncomfortable humor, man. This
Yes,
you're watching it and you're like, oh my God, just I want the scene to end, but you're laughing at it, you know.
yes,
But
yeah, yeah.
the problem with
About every 3 or 4 months, I will watch his like 2 minute speech from the Oscars.
yeah, I
You know,
love that.
hey Jim,
Oh,
like
you know, Jim?
just I know Jim. I inked him on a project for hell ever ago. Um, when Gervais shows up and says, just come up, accept your little award, thank
Yeah,
your God,
nobody
and
cares about
get
your
the
politics.
yeah.
You get
I
up
love
here.
that. That's the kind of thing that more people need to hear. You know,
In Extras, the scene where with his worthless agent goes on a date with his friend. She means well, but she's just dumb.
yeah,
And they're sitting in her apartment, and they're hitting it off. They cut to Ricky Gervais. They cut back. You hear the toilet flush, and he comes out, and he's just like, I gotta wait a couple of minutes for it to fill again. I gotta give it another flush." And she's just like, huh, huh, huh. And she's like, "Oh, that's okay." And he's like, "No, no, no. I really got to do this. You don't want to be involved in this." And then they cut to Ricky Gervais, and then they cut back to he's walking back with a whisk, and he's going into the. It's just like, oh my God, it's so uncomfortable.
oh, that's
How
awful.
did you think of that scene? Oh, but that's what I think. The Brits, they like a long setup, a long situation.
Yeah,
Where I think the Americans like a faster, quippy punchline joke. And I
three
think
to
the
five
movie,
page scenes, everything self-contained, but it builds you into the next one.
I think the best of example of American humor and British humor is A Fish Called Wanda.
Yes,
You know, it's written by I think Michael Palin from Monty Python, and it has all of
please.
these wonderfully set up scenes.
Yeah,
And then at the same time, you got what was it, Jamie Lee Curtis and Michael, what's his name, the actor who's Kevin Kline,
yep.
just doing American style quips and jokes, and I think they even joke about it in the movie. It's so funny. I gotta watch that movie again.
Kevin Kline is a great dumb guy,
Yeah,
and the apology that John Cleese gives while he's hanging out the window is my favorite apology of all time. That lawyerly apologize. I apologize without reservation about the unkind remarks that I made. And he just goes on and on because he's selling that gig because he didn't want to, shake hands with gravity.
and then the safes landing on he's trying that guy's trying to kill a woman. He keeps missing and killing the dogs, and
I
then
love how
they zoom in on him crying.
I love how the animal lover accidentally kills so many animals and it just breaks his heart a little bit more every time he does something terrible. But he's sort of got to do it.
I just love. I don't know, the British. I mean, I was a kid watching Monty Python, and
Yeah.
when I first started watching Monty Python, I just wanted to see the cartoons. And then every once in a while on Channel 13, it was unedited. And in like 2 episodes, there was a topless girl. So it's like, is this
Uh-huh.
the episode? Because, when you're 7 years old, we didn't have access to what you guys have today. So like the
Yeah.
cartoons, topless. And then you wanted to see people get dropped by 16-ton weights. And then later on, you're watching 10-minute scenes of uncut. So it's these guys memorizing these soliloquies and back and forth. And, I
And there's musical numbers. What's not to like?
yeah. Oh man, it's so bizarre. And then you go to work and you go to school and you recite Monty Python, and that's when you realize you're a nerd. When
Yeah. When
like,
you're at lunch singing "Every Sperm is Sacred."
yeah, you're at work and you're singing the lumberjack song,
Yes.
and then you look and the kid over there with the broken glasses gets up and starts singing. I'm like, oh, reality just hit me in the face with the fish.
Oh shit! I think we accidentally bonded.
Yeah. Oh no, I
Yeah.
thought I was cool. Oh well.
I was
And on that
never
note,
under that delusion.
I have to get going. My wife has been we've been waiting to go to my favorite breakfast place for a while. So anything that I didn't mention or anything you want to mention that you didn't have a chance to bring up?
No, the Blackheart and Valentine book's available on Kickstarter and on Indiegogo. That's pretty much it.
And now for
And
something completely different, the end.
yeah, there you go.
And
It's good to see you, John.
it's always good to talk. Yeah, such an interesting person. I'm so glad I reached out and started talking to you. It's a lot of
I
fun.
am too. I'm glad that comics accidentally brought us together.
Yep. Yeah. And that, again, positivity in the internet comic book world. Go figure, right?
There you go. It's rare.
Yeah. But thanks a lot, everybody. Back the book. I love this series. I'm so excited it's coming back. I love this stuff. It's so good, and I hope this paves the way for new material. This will be great.
If we make enough money, I've got an idea for some Blackheart and Valentine stories. We'll see if it works.
Oh, cool. Good. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye, everybody. And don't forget, yes, I have a comic. Thanks, Marcus. I have a comic book right now. It's on Indiegogo.
You should totally fund it.
Mike Gustovich cover. And if you go to Fund My Comic, it's in demand store. You can get the regular cover, the Renzo cover. You can get the Michael T. Gilbert cover, and you can get the Pat Broderick cover. So thanks a lot, everybody. Bye-bye.